does, when he goes to one, I'm out of it when I do this, right?
No.
Oh, that's different.
Yeah.
How come?
It's a creative thing. It's a good looking shot.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. I mean, and it's casual. Like I mean, maybe don't go on Facebook all the time.
For Facebook, I think it's okay. On the TV show, I think that'd be weird.
It depends on how you pull it off, to be honest.
Although I guess it's because it would look weird because if I didn't know it, I'd be like,
yeah, right,
and I'd be distracted. So
it's a little bit risky because I don't have an operator, but it's not that risky because
it's good to know.
Yeah, but if you watch most talk shows, they're actually doing a lot of over-the-shoulder shots.
Are they?
Yeah.
I did when I started this. I did watch a lot of live stuff. I would watch Rich Eisen. He's sports, and he would be the host of like the halftime talk shows and the pregame shows.
Oh, nice.
Where he's got like 4 guys, and he's the host, and he carries the whole thing.
Really?
And then the other guy who's a master is, I don't know what his name is. He's an Italian guy, and he does the Red Zone channel.
So that would be
Yes,
local, right? That would be local, no? No? Red Zone?
No, Red Zone's the national NFL network.
Oh, is that what it's
in
called?
Scoring positions because they're in the red zone.
Oh.
So it's the all-action NFL
Oh, it's because
network.
don't they have the red zone at the Cardinal
you're right.
Stadium? Yeah.
But
that's
this
what I was
guy,
thinking
so
of.
this guy is live for 8 to 10 hours every Sunday.
How does he do it? 8 to 10
He's
hours.
incredible. And you can't fully script it because you don't know what's coming up.
Yeah.
You're watching live sports, and it's switching from game to game to game to game to game. Because they feature whoever's in the red zone, they cut to. And if they score, you comment on it. If they don't, you switch to somebody else. And then there's time nobody's in the red zone in the whole NFL.
Wow.
And you got to carry it. And the guy is incredible.
Man, he really knows his craft.
Not only his craft, but
all the players, everything.
Not only that, but the ability to talk for 8 hours.
Well, and to be interesting.
Yeah, because he is.
Yeah, because you could be talking and just saying nothing.
And the thing that's good about him is he's in a in a wonderful way, he's relatable. So he can talk, but he knows not only how to talk, but
how to engage.
Yeah.
Which is going to be huge,
he can
right?
talk about nothing when there's nothing going on, but he makes it fun.
One of the books I'm reading right now, Talk Like Ted, teaches you about engaging. You know, what are the stories that help engage
That's good.
your audience, right? So it's a pretty good little book.
I need to do that. I want to learn more in writing because I am something of an intellectual. Like that first paragraph of the chapter, grabbing him, and Patricia, when she read this new book, she's like, I love this book. A couple of the chapters, you start out amazing. Some of the other ones, it was too much ideas at first, and then the testimony came later, and I was like, that's how they wanted me to do it. And she was great. She said, I'm reading Joyce Meyer right now. Because in Joyce Meyer's book, she shares these great ideas, but she knows how to capture your heart from the first sentence. And I was like, I'm going to start reading that.
Yeah, might as well. Because what we're looking for, I mean, what I've always been drawn to, and I don't care if it's a man or a woman, is I love studying the character of men, but there's some women, like I love Patricia, she can hit it, man. And so when you hear someone like that can just connect, sometimes she gets a lot of slack, but to me, Oprah Winfrey was probably one of the best interviewers because she knew how to connect heart to heart to people. Now, I don't agree with her message all the time, but here's the deal. She could connect in an intimate place with every single one of her guests.
She sometimes, like some of the great interviewers do, like her. Yep, I hear you, Stephen. All right. Okay, cool. We're going to go here in just a minute.
Hit it.
Some of the great ones, like Barbara Walter, struck me as emotionally manipulative, though.
Really, yeah.
Because they're trying to get the reaction, which is actually, you're trying for good TV.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and then to be fair, like I think some of her like Super Soul Sundays or whatever, I've seen a couple of them, and I thought to myself, well, Oprah, you did a good job there.
And there's that delicate balance between being engaging. people. And I said, he's obviously doing something right. He's connecting with millions of people around the world.
This man, he has like, oh, Jesus. The Lord uses that, man.
Okay, sure.
So when you start, I got to get off, right? Like, I got to be back,
Probably.
right? Yeah,
but,
just to be
but
safe.
I think, hey, Stephen, can you hear me? Francisco asked a good question. He's also in my one shot, right? Oh, so if he leans back, he's not in my one shot. Okay. Okay, got it. Okay.
So just like last week, right?
Right, just like last week. So he got artsy on this side, which I like that he's experimenting. That's cool.
What a good group of media peeps we have.
Our people. You know what's amazing to me is, talk about a testimony. And
even when you make a mistake.
Yeah.
Well, Lord, thank you for this opportunity, Father. Lord, everyone that's watching, Father.
There was a problem or a challenge with connecting to my Men on the Frontlines Facebook page, so they're still looking into it.
Oh, okay. We got time then. Well, so can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
We were talking at lunch. When we're talking about that testimony, we're talking about from the point where I got laid off, or?
Are you going to do it without the Men on the Frontlines page? Yeah, I just was going to say, if it's become too much of a hassle, I can post it to the Men on the Frontlines page later. Oh, good. Good for you guys. Way to go.
Oh, perfect. Okay. We're ready. We are going to flow well. Thank you, Jesus.
Well done.
Hey.
Just, can I see your mic?
Yes.
No.
Oh.
The bass.
Oh, the mute switch.
Oh, you couldn't hear me? Wow.
I could hear you
through here.
Oh. Yeah. That's how you solved Brad and I in North Carolina. We had one problem, and he actually sweetened it up post so that he could hear Brad through my mic or me through Brad's mic.
Nice.
Because only one mic was live. I don't remember which one. And you wouldn't know it.
Men on the front lines.
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 We call forth these mighty men of valor.
The Lord put a vision in my heart for a new movement amongst men in the body of Christ.
The Lord says that I'm going to make champions out of those who would gather unto me.
And I believe what men on the front lines will do.
And I see it going into the nations.
He's going to raise the bar among men. It's time for heroes to arise.
And this is Heroes Arise. Men on the Front Lines live social media broadcast, equipping, encouraging you so that you can arise as the hero, the warrior, and the champion that God created you to be. You are important. You matter. You make a difference, and you have a key role to play for the kingdom in the earth. So thank you for being with me again this week. Before we get into this week's topic, I've got a couple quick announcements for you. We have another Man Camp coming up this October 5 through 7 in Prescott, Arizona, and I want to see you there. Man Camp, we're having a blast at Man Camp. They're a great chance to unplug from the busyness of life and the hectic of all our to-do lists and our chores and our gotta go here, gotta get this done. For a weekend, we get to unplug from all that, get together with a great group of guys in the great outdoors and enjoy the great I am. So join me, join Brad Carter, and join an amazing group of brothers who are on fire for the Lord in a wonderful weekend where we're going to enjoy outdoor activities, also have some fellowship time together, prayer time together. It's going to be a great time, and it won't be the same without you. So join me at Man Camp this October 5 through 7. And speaking of great opportunities, how about coming to Cambodia with us for our Frontlines outreach event, where Men on the Frontlines is coming together with women on the front lines and seniors on the front lines to go to Phnom Penh, Cambodia, where myself and Andrea Assen and Carol Cook and Elvina McCain, we're all going to work together along with you to invade Cambodia with the power, the presence, and the personality of Jesus Christ. If you have a passion for missions, or you've got a heart to see women and children set free from the sex trade and human trafficking, or you have always wondered, what would it look like to really see the gospel explode through me to bring freedom, shifts, and change to a person or to a region, then you need to join us for our Frontlines outreach event in Cambodia this September. You can find out about both those events by going to the events page under, if you go to patriciaking.com, you're going to see, I'm going to get you there. It's a little complicated, but I promise it's easier than it sounds. Go to patriciaking.com. You're going to see at the top menu the Frontlines link. Click on that, you'll see men, click on that, and at the bottom of our Men on the Front Lines page, you're going to see all the event opportunities. Or let's make this really simple. Go to menonthefrontlines.com, click events, and it'll take you right to the page. It'll tell you all about Man Camp. Or if you're watching this on my public Facebook page, @official Robert Hotchkin, then you can simply click the banner on the top of the page, and it will give you the link to find out all about Man Camp. And if any of that's too complicated, please feel free to simply email me, Robert@menonthefrontlines.com, and I would be glad to send you links, information, or personally answer any and all of your questions. One last quick thing I got for you is take some time this week and go to roberthotchkin.com. We've launched that website. We got it up running, and I've got a gift for you there. I've got a free download of a free teaching for you when you go to roberthotchkin.com. All you have to do is go there, click on the link, and it will download this free teaching that will get you activated in the supernatural aspects of the kingdom. It'll download it right to your computer, your smartphone, your tablet, or whatever you're surfing the web on and like to listen to your teachings on. So other than that, stay tuned to the very end of the broadcast. We are going to debut a new video today that'll be at the very end. But before we get to the end of the broadcast, I get to introduce my very special guest again this week, Francisco Arboleta. Thanks for coming back, buddy.
Man. Come on.
You were with me last week, and we had so much fun. I asked you to come back this week.
Thank you.
And last week we talked about boundaries and balance and how to handle everything in life when God brings us in to our passions, to our dreams, to our desires, and things get really, really busy. And people really appreciated what you shared and what we talked about, but you know, what was on my heart for some of the people who were watching is, what about those people who haven't yet come in to what they're dreaming about, what God's called them to? Because that can be a challenging season. You and I have both been there individually, which is why I wanted to talk to you about this. Because I know for some of you that, you know, we've had the prophetic word, sometimes not just once, but twice, 3 times, 4 times, dozens of times. We believe it. We've grabbed hold of it, and we're declaring it, and we've learned how to steward a prophetic word and agree with it. And yet sometimes there are those times when you're sitting there going, God, what is going on? What are you doing? Where's my dream? Where's my calling? What's happened? And the thing that I've learned, and I definitely want to hear from you, is that God knows exactly what he's doing.
Yes, he does.
And he's never, just like in the Garden of Eden, he wasn't withholding something from us.
Yeah.
He had a way he knows how to bring us into what he has for us. And before we get into talking about this topic, I want to give you one more promise from God to give you peace about this. It's out of Genesis 28:15, where God says this. God promises his people in Genesis 28:15, Francisco, he says, I will be with you constantly until I finish bringing you into everything that I have promised you. Now, different translations say it different way, but that's the gist of the promise. God says to you, here's the deal. I will be with you constantly. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. All of my promises are yes and amen. You can count on them, and you don't have to figure out how I'm going to do it. I promise you that I'll be with you. I promise you that I will bring you in to everything that I have promised. And I tell you what, on the one hand, we go, that brings me a lot of peace.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there can be that sense of, well, then come on and do it, Lord. So you've lived this.
Yeah.
How long have I known you?
Ooh, man.
Since my first year of traveling traveling ministry.
2004, 2005.
Yeah, so we've known each other well over 10 years.
Yeah.
I met you preaching in Las Vegas, one of the very first meetings I ever did at a house, and we connected and have been friends ever since. You actually came over, served in the ministry.
I wasn't even serving the ministry when we met. So
oh, right,
yes.
exactly, right.
Yeah.
But I met you when you were 22, 23, 24, something like that,
so
right?
24,
yeah.
about 24.
But you knew your calling from way before that. Now, you were telling me that you had, was it dreams?
Yeah.
When you were, what, 14, 15 years old, where you knew God was calling you to preach?
Yeah.
And to pastor and to lead a church?
That is correct. Well, the pastoring part wasn't there quite yet, but here's where it started, is that I started having dreams at the age of 16, 19, where I was attending church as a young man. The pastor that was serving our family at the time just saw something on me. And he, unbeknownst to him, I had started having dreams of preaching.
Wow.
And I didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
Realistically, but the dreams kept coming, and they kept coming over and over and over. And what do you do with that? You know, here I was 16 years old. I didn't know what to do with that.
Right.
But there was a calling, there was a blessing there. And I really think that, for me, the story is in ministry. But what I love about this, and what we're going to talk about today, and as this unfolds and unpacks, is that it doesn't matter if you're part of the business world, or you're part of the ministry. Like, when there's a calling over your life, God
know it.
Exactly. And God is faithful to walk you through the process.
Right.
And
sometimes, though, when the calling is, say, to the business world, or to the political realm, or let's say like my wife's calling was to medicine, sometimes it's easier to get your head around the journey, because now it doesn't have to go this way, but we can think things like, well, like my wife, she did regular school, then undergrad, then she got her master's degree, and then she decided to go to medical school. So that we can sometimes be more comfortable in those journeys, and yet even in that, you never know how God's going to do it.
Yeah, and the truth is that even in ministry, there's steps.
Right, there can be, yeah.
Even in ministry, there's steps. And so I had this expectation in my mind growing up of what it should look like.
Right.
Because I had gone on missions trips, if you will. The pastor, again, that I was serving under, he started taking us to South America. And so a group of us, and so I would get to start ministering. And so then I had this idea in my mind, oh, this is what ministry is. This is what you're supposed to do. And I started calculating in my mind and coming up with these are the things I'm going to have to do to begin to walk into this and just go for it. And it never happened the way it never happened the way I thought up, and I laugh about it and I laugh at myself, and not to make fun of myself, but wow, the expectation of what happened versus everything that the Lord has brought me through now. Like you said, the scripture you quoted out of Genesis, where the Lord has been with me the whole way, and He's, in a lot of ways, He's ordained my steps. Yeah. And so, what does that look like? And it's been a humbling journey.
And let's be real, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because we are friends, and not only friends, you're my pastor. We spend a lot of time together with serving in Shiloh Fellowship together, serving in the ministry together, and just doing the stuff that needs to be done around here together. And we've gotten to know each other, become friends, part of each other's accountability. So I know quite a bit of your story. And the truth is, even though now you really are walking in the fulfillment of so much of the fulfillment of that calling of those dreams, let's get real. It's been in the natural, it's been a long journey. And there were times when it looked like it was going to happen, and then it didn't, and what felt and looked like a setback. But you can look back on all of it now and realize that God did it the perfect way.
He did it the best way for me.
Yeah.
He did it the best way for me. He guided me through every one of my heart processes and thought patterns and everything, and just guided me through there. Because even when I was once serving in the ministry, and I don't want to jump too far, but it's just in the sense of like thinking about everything that God has done with me. Yes, I was dreaming. Yes, God was giving me a calling. Yes, I mean, there was prophetic word after prophetic word. I remember one time being called out, and I never even knew him, but I remember Todd Bentley coming to our church and calling me out and preaching to me. Some of the people from Carlos Anacondio's camp coming to our church and calling me out and prophesying over my life. I remember Joshua Mills coming to our church and calling me out. And so just thinking about it, and like, what do you do with all that? You started with that. It's like all these calls, all these prophetic words, these amazing prophetic people coming over my life. The first time I met Patricia King, didn't even know who the woman was. And I had no concept or idea of who she was, but she started just laying out a prophetic word over my life. And all of it it had to do with coming into the ministry and calling. And so there was this plan, and there was this, I hadn't seen it all, but here we go, you know, and I start serving in the ministry. And I remember going through layoffs and all these things that happened.
When you started serving in our ministry.
Correct, yeah.
So just so you all know, when Francisco started serving in our ministry, you served, one of the major ways you served, you have a servant's heart, you helped in anything where you needed help. But one of your main roles was basically the building and ground supervisor.
Yeah,
so
it doesn't sound glorious.
It's not like, oh, I'm in ministry now. I had those dreams about overseeing the landscape crew when I was.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And now that might be your dream, but it wasn't yours. So you're thinking, here I am, I'm in ministry, and God really, and I'll use a word that I believe in because my journey's similar. God really blessed you.
Yeah, come on.
To bring you in to what you chose, and I respect this about you, you chose to see this as the beginning of stepping into your dream.
I did.
And even though it wasn't preaching, even though it wasn't pastoring, even though it wasn't, you said, this is my dream. I've wanted to be in ministry since I was 16. But I want you also to be honest with the viewers that there were times you wrestled with, like, God, is this what it's going to be?
Big time.
If you called me to the ministry of building supervision, because God, this isn't my passion.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. You know, went through all these layoffs and things in the professional world because I was a professional construction, you know, employee and staff member, and I was a project manager. But stepping into the ministry, so here I was. I had some notoriety. I had a really great resume.
You'd done very well in the building and trades,
and God really blessed me in the construction industry. And then moving into ministry, it wasn't.
When you came from Vegas to here, right?
Yeah, there was a lot that happened. It wasn't glorious, to say the least. And but God knew what I needed in my heart, and so I started serving. You know, it's 111 degrees outside, and I'm outside raking leaves.
For those of you who don't live here in the Phoenix Valley, the summer is crazy hot. 111 degrees, and you're working outside.
I'm thirsty thinking about it. But what happens is, you know, I started serving, and the first person I served with was actually Ron Cocking.
Right, Patricia's husband.
Yeah,
Patricia's amazing husband. Ron.
And I would come and I would just start serving, and he taught me a lot of stuff. But we, you know, we're washing windows, and we're cutting grass, and we're cleaning toilets,
and trimming trees,
and we're trimming trees. And then you get someone walking by and say, God has a calling over your life. He's going to use you so powerfully. I'm like, yeah, he's using me really powerfully. I'm scrubbing toilets right now. He's using me really powerfully, vacuuming floors, setting up the chairs. But then my heart attitude changed.
Right.
And it made all the difference in the world. And it wasn't that I was looking forward to, I don't know that I ever looked forward to clean the toilets, but here's what I'm getting, and it's just an expression.
Yeah.
But here's what I'm getting to is that the heart started changing, and I started looking forward for the opportunities to serve the Lord.
And that's key. I know for me, I didn't get saved until I was almost 40 when I had the sovereign encounter with God in the woods outside my cabin in Montana. I get saved, I get radically saved, and then within a year, God's called me into ministry.
Yeah.
And I'm wrestling with him because I didn't really want to do that at first. But then all of a sudden I realized this is what I want.
Yeah.
He opens the doors for me to come down here. I think I'm going to come down for 6 months, learn what I can, and then get on with my life.
Yeah.
But long story short, I'm 40. So you were in your early 30s I was 40, so I was in a hurry. Not from simply the sense of I was so grateful to know the Lord, and I felt like I had wasted almost 4 decades in the world. So I was like, okay, God, if you're calling me to ministry, let's get this show on the road.
Yeah.
Let's get this thing doing. Let's save the lost. Let's heal the sick. And my first quite some time in ministry was helping Ron as we traveled with Patricia, working the book table, loading the trailers, doing all that stuff. And there were times when there was a part of me that was like, Lord, is this it?
Yeah.
But I know what you mean about that heart shift, because there came a moment where I had to make a decision. It was, if this is it, so be it.
Yeah, come on.
Because what I want is to serve you.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that for me was where God had needed to get me. Now I want you to hear this. He's not trying to break us.
No.
He's trying to help us be positioned to run our entire race well.
Yeah.
He wants to, and here's another scripture that came to me today. In Exodus 13 it says, when God brought the people out of Egypt, He did not lead them along the shortest path.
Yeah,
because he knew if he did, there'd be battles they'd hit that they couldn't handle.
That's cool.
God did not bring me along. Many of my peers came up faster and quicker and everything. And yet, like you, I know my path was perfect. Yeah. And yet I want to be real with everybody watching. There were times I was like, God, what is going on? So I've given up everything, literally everything but my beat up old Cherokee Jeep. And I've given it all up so I can sell somebody else's tapes at the book table. And yet I had to get to a place where it was like, okay, and here's what I think is the gift that I got, and I want to hear your input on this.
Yeah, sure.
There came a point where I had to make a decision, not just, my first decision was, is this worth it?
Yeah.
And my answer was yes, but then the big decision, the life-changing, perspective-shifting
hit me.
was, is he worth it?
Ooh.
Because ultimately, I knew I was called to preach just like you. I knew I was called to, as a voice to the nations, I knew it. But ultimately, what I had to get to is I was called to know him, be known by him, know his love him in return, and obey.
Yeah.
And trust, not, okay, I'll obey you because I love you, because it's not an abusive relationship. Obey because I trust.
Yeah.
And ultimately know, Lord, I'm here to serve you. So you know this, you've heard this, but my prayer became, Lord, if you've called me, if all of this has been me misunderstanding and what you've called me to be as a book table worker, I have one request. Make me the best book table worker this ministry has ever seen.
Yeah, that is really encouraging. I mean, I feel really encouraged right now by that. For me, it was, as I was learning all these things and coming up, it was always a, do you know that I love you, son? It was a father-son moment between me and the Lord. And it wasn't that God was saying, you don't know nothing.
Right.
You're low level. You've messed up in your life.
This is all I can trust you with.
This is all you can do. You're just going to put out the envelopes and just be happy. It wasn't God doing that at all.
Nope.
He was teaching me how to serve because he loved me so much. He wanted me to have a love for what I was doing.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened as God began to change in me my heart and I began to serve. I started to fall in love with the people. I started to fall in love with their stories. I started falling in love with serving in the church. Huge. And that's what God was setting me up for. He was setting me up to reveal the pastor's heart that was laying deep down inside of me that honestly I didn't know I had.
Right.
This father's heart that I have even now for my children.
And if he had plopped you down in the midst of, because right now, you are the lead pastor over our local Shiloh Fellowship.
Yeah.
If he had plopped you down in that right away,
would I have learned it?
You might not have one of the most beautiful pastor hearts of anybody I've ever seen because you did let your heart blossom. We talk about blossom where you're planted.
Yeah,
and you did that. And it doesn't mean you'll stay there. It means how you blossom, God then moved you into this. I think the other thing that he's teaching, at least for me, is I think back now, all that I get to do now, I'm so grateful that God brought me step by step into this because how I was raised, when I was raised, where I was raised. As a man, we often get a lot of identity out of what we do.
Yeah.
And the title, the role.
That's right.
And God really had to teach me, he'd ask me two questions. Most of the time it was, do you trust me?
Yeah.
And it was like, and I'd always have to decide, yeah, God, I do. And it was when I was living in a tiny little metal trailer in an asphalt parking lot in 120-degree heat, the sun baking down on it, and my life didn't look like anything he'd showed me, and he'd say, do you trust me? And it really comes down to what you were saying. He'd ask you, son, do you know I love you?
Yeah.
Because then, it's what he did for Jesus. He set Jesus up by declaring, he didn't send Jesus out into his ministry until declaring over the Son, and the Son knowing and receiving it. Now, Jesus always knew it because he was the Son.
That's right.
But the model we see is Jesus was launched out in his earthly ministry with the declaration, you are my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased.
Yeah, he let us
So he
know.
could do everything from identity, not for identity.
That's right.
And I know that most of what I've learned in my 14-year journey that I'm still on, or 15-year journey now that I'm still on, that has brought me to this point, and all I get to do is I'm so grateful because 12, 13, 14 years ago, I probably would have still been doing some of this for identity as opposed to I get to do all this from identity.
Yeah, come on. That's huge. One thing.
There's so much peace in it.
Tons. It's so much better
It
this
breaks
way.
you free of performance. I mean, if we have a bad show, it's like, okay, What happened? How can we learn from it? And how can we serve the people better next time? As opposed to, oh, I'm embarrassed, or oh, that didn't work. If I'm out on the road and I preach a message and it doesn't land, I simply want to ask Holy Spirit, help me grow so I can serve these people in this region better on behalf of the kingdom, as opposed to, oh, the message didn't land. I'm a bad preacher. I don't ever do. And when I was a brand new preacher, if I did preach and it didn't land, my wrestle was, oh, I don't ever want to do that again. I was embarrassed. I didn't sound good. I didn't look good. I must not be called to this, as opposed to resting in him and realizing he's teaching us all along the way.
I remember the first time I did preach, my knees were knocking so hard. I was so nervous and so scared now, and I remember thinking to myself, now this is after, some stuff, and I thought to myself, Lord, is this what you called me to? Like, I can't even put two words together. Robert, I had prepared for so long and had this message, and now, you said something about trust that just triggered something in me, that here I was now stepping into what God was actually going to do with me now, which is to learn how to preach, to learn how to be a pastor, and I couldn't even do it. I could not even do it. And so,
don't you think that's part of the point, though?
I did.
It's so that we learn, I can't do this without you, and he can say, well, good, because you don't have to.
Again, the setup.
Right.
Again, the setup. And now, along with the love and understanding that I am loved, I got to learn how to trust the Lord and begin to trust that I do hear his voice, and that there are things inside of me that he's placed, and that he does speak to me, and that he is using me in the way of for the kingdom, you know, and it just changed everything that I think about now. That Lord, I trust you to speak, and so even when, I hope this doesn't feel like a curveball, but I remember a time, if I could say, that once I got into ministry and I started really just, okay, here we go, you know, I'm serving, and I remember. This is funny, but I actually got, in my construction career, I got laid off a few times. And I thought to myself, surely I've landed in my, land of milk and honey. I'm in now.
I'm in my calling, I'm in my tribe, I'm in my home.
There's nothing that's gonna stop me now. I'm good, like I'm with my people. This is my family, And I was feeling really good about everything. And I can laugh about it now, but I remember getting pulled aside and in a short story, getting laid off from working in the ministry, and now having to go back and remember that I'm choosing to trust the Lord and that he loves me.
We obviously, we were friends then, and I remember talking with you in that season. And one of the things that I thought was amazing about you is you did choose to trust the Lord in that season.
I did.
And yet, again, to encourage everybody watching, we would talk, and because you were very honest with me, and you were even saying, as a father of 5 and a husband, it's a little challenging because that regular income isn't there, and yet way down deep you knew, and we talked about this, and yet I'm not doing fully what I want to do and what I know I'm called to. So you chose to see it as a divine setup, that this would actually be your stepping stone, not a stumbling block, but a stepping stone to the next part of your journey and calling into actually preaching, pastoring, and what you realized you were really passionate about. And I was so proud of you, and yet, again, to be real with everybody and encourage you right where you are, is that it didn't happen like that.
Nope.
And you had the right attitude, you were praying the right prayers, and yet God still knew the exact right way to lead you.
Yeah, and going low in a humble way, in the sense of like, I'll serve wherever you want me to,
And what was cool, because I know you, is you ended up back in Vegas.
I did.
And that was the season where you got to really decide, do I want this?
Yeah.
Because you were presented with an opportunity, and if I get any details wrong, please correct me, but you were presented with an opportunity to step into a pastoral role, but as a volunteer.
Correct.
Unpaid position.
That's right.
As a father of 5, and you had to make a decision of, one, either I've got to completely trust God, or no matter what, and that could look like supernatural provision every single day, or you realize, no, I know what God's telling me to do, to go back into working full time And then what I love about this is because of what you're called to, God wanted it so settled in your heart that no matter what, no matter what, if I have to do this for free, I'm not doing this for title, I'm not doing this for position, I'm not doing this for income, I'm doing this because it's what you made me for, and it's what I want to do with you and for you, Lord. So you did it for free for quite a while.
I did. You know, and that is such a good point. I got a job because I have to be responsible.
And that's not failure.
No, not at all.
Not at all. That's success.
Yeah, I went back and got a job. In construction industry again, because I have to feed my family.
Yeah,
I have a responsibility. But I didn't give up on my dream. And what was burning at me every day wasn't that I had gotten laid off and you know, the enemy will try to mess with you and say, yeah, you thought that you were ready and all, you know, yes, he will try to come in and mess with you. But I chose to say, you know what? God gave me those dreams.
That's right.
He gave me those desires. And when I actually thought, you know what, I got to start over. And I humbled myself. And I remember going to the leadership of the church that I went back to. And I said, listen, I'll do whatever you want me to. I will scrub toilets. I will wash your car. Man, I'll hand out envelopes. I'll greet the people. I'll help the old ladies to their car. Whatever you want to do. And here was the change. Because of my heart attitude, Robert, I really believe this. Because I didn't give up on the dream, because the Lord was watching me, the pastor came to me and said, what is it that you want to do?
Yeah.
And it changed right there.
And I'll say this, something I've always seen in you. And we're on this journey together, and we're both growing as we're on this journey. But from the beginning, I saw that servant heart in you. And that's what the kingdom's all about, especially when you're called to some kind of leadership position, to have that servant heart. And he saw that in you and said, I so appreciate that you're willing to do all this. I might need you to do some of it, but what do you want? What's your dream?
He did, and he allowed me to, that pastor allowed me to step in, who actually happens to be a good friend, who actually stepped into the senior pastoral
This was Pastor
leadership.
Dennis Walker?
Actually,
or his son?
It was actually his nephew.
Oh, his nephew.
His nephew. He had actually turned the church over to his nephew. He serves as an apostolic leader to the nation of Peru and has been for many years. But he turned the church, the local business and body and the oversight of the church, he turned it over to his nephew, Andrew Walker.
Okay. I didn't realize that was his nephew.
Yeah, that was his nephew.
He turned it over. Okay.
Yeah, and so I approached Andrew with humility. And again, he said, what do you want to do? He said, well, then that's what you're going to do.
Come on.
And he started to just work with me and just help, because here's another thing that I needed in the process.
Real quick, I want you to catch this spiritual principle to help you, is you were willing, even after having been in Elisha for quite a season, you refused bitterness, offense, anger, frustration, confusion in the natural and with God, and he was willing to be an Elisha, and that actually opened the door for you stepping into your Elijah position, where you were willing to say, no matter what, whatever I need to do, and they saw that, and that helped be the catapult.
That's a great way to say it. It really is a good reflection.
Because you weren't putting a demand on how, when, and why, and where anymore, and yet it was the right season. So your willingness to serve again, God was saying, I know that's your heart. We've worked that in you, and now I remember when. One of the times I was invited overseas to go and be a part of a crusade, and I had talked to Patricia and said, how do you feel about this? I was still serving with her, and she said, oh, I'm excited. You're called to the nations, you're called to preach, you're called to this kind of thing, but I really want to talk to the person about it if you're okay with it. I said, sure, why? She said, I want to see what the role is they're going to have for you. And I said, Patricia, it doesn't matter. They do these crusades. I'll carry their bags. I'll do whatever, and she said, I know you will, but I see it's a new season for you, so I want to make sure that they're going to give you an opportunity to step into that season.
That's exactly what happened to me in Las Vegas.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a new season for you. And he said, and that's exactly what he said to me. He said, he looked at me and said, I know you'll do those things.
Come on.
And I know if I ever need them, I can call on you and you'll do them.
Yeah.
He said, but he looked at me right dead in the face and he said, but I'd rather be used of the Lord to see you step into your calling than to just have you continue to wash toilets. And I said, listen, and he, again, if I ever need it, I'll call on you. But now is the time for you to grow. And this church now God used them as yet another stepping stone in the dream.
Right on.
Another stepping stone in this life for me to begin to exercise the things that are called. Because from the time I was 16 and 19, being used by the Lord to preach in the nation of Peru, to lay hands and I mean, I saw miracles, Robert.
You worked miracles, right?
As a teenager.
Yes.
it felt like I went backwards in my life, but I stayed with the dream. And so now here I am in this place, and I'm preparing my sermon for the first time. And the whole time, my friend Andrew, my bro in Christ, is standing next to me saying, "You can do this.
Yeah, come on.
You can do this." Encourage me. You can do this. You were called into this. He continued to remind me of my calling, of the plans that God had for my life. And I think that is so important.
It is.
It's huge.
The other thing that really hit me, and I even wrote down David, because you talked about, this sense of, well, I'm willing to do anything, and sometimes, and when you hear it looked like as a teenager, you stepped into this. You're preaching in the nations. You're working miracles. And in the natural, to our natural understanding, could be what happened. But you think about David. I mean, here's a guy, the prophet Samuel shows up because it is time to anoint the king, to call forth the king of Israel.
That's right.
David's own father doesn't even think to call him in from the field.
Yeah.
I mean, he lines up every son but
Isn't that
David.
crazy?
He's getting no positive reinforcement. And then Samuel's like, no, it's none of these dudes. Is that it? And he's like, well, I've got this one kid out in the field.
Left.
He calls him in, and to everyone's surprise, probably including David's, that's the one. And he is anointed.
That's right.
Anointed by the prophet of God to be the next king of Israel. You want to talk about a big day?
Yeah.
Come on.
That's a big day.
Where was he the next day?
Out with the sheep.
Out with the sheep again. Why?
Right.
Because God was preparing him.
That's right.
He said, because I saw my God slay the lion, slay the bear, I know we can slay this giant. Because he slayed this giant, I know we can handle this situation. Because he had what your experience multiple times, not just then, but then he's a rock star. He has killed Goliath, and he's the rock star of Israel.
Yeah.
Oh, now I've come into everything. Now I'm not just preaching and working miracles at 15 to 19. I've come into everything. The next thing you know, he's getting chased out of the kingdom by the guy who's his biggest apostolic sponsor. And one thing, and then his son turns again. All these twists and turns. God may not author all of them, but he's using all of them, because the other thing that struck me about your story is not only do you now have a champion, an apostolic champion who's helping bring, but you're still doing it all for free while working a full-time job. And you could be like, Lord, what's the deal with that? Well, I'll tell you what the deal is. I bet you the hours you put in between those two things is pretty akin to the hours you put in now, full-time employment as a pastor, preacher, all of that. I had to go through the same thing where what used to overwhelm me my first year in ministry, what would completely overwhelm me, and I'd think, how am I going to get this done this week? It wouldn't fill a Tuesday for me.
Yeah, come on. I was a father, a husband. I was back in my trade, working full-time hours, 40 plus hours a week, because that's what it takes if you're going to be good.
That's right.
And at the same time, with any spare time I had left, I was finding ways to serve in the church. I was trying to create opportunities to serve in the church. And I would just ask God for wisdom. Lord, what does this look like? Because I'm not going to give up on the dream.
And then your suddenly came.
Totally.
Because, the last part of this testimony that I want to encourage you all with is, so you're doing this, and you're choosing to rejoice in it. You're choosing to serve everything, serve your family faithfully, your kids faithfully, your wife faithfully. You're choosing to show up as a dad and a husband. You're choosing to show up and work a full-time job to support your family. You're just like Desiree's choosing to work a full-time job in serving the family on the home front.
That's right.
And support you and her and your kids, supporting you in all of this.
She's just
and then
amazing.
Serving full-time for free, volunteering at the ministry. And then you're at this point thinking this must be it, and then the phone call comes.
And then the phone call comes, and the phone call that changes a man's life.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, it was a friend on the other side of the phone.
Right.
And that friend called me to say, I can't get you off my mind. The Lord is calling you. And I sat there on the other side of the phone, and it was actually in my office.
So you all know, in case it's not clear, the friend was Patricia King,
and
she was calling on behalf of our ministry. I think I was in England when she WhatsApped me, and we talked about this, and I was like, he's perfect.
Yeah.
And she was excited because everybody on our general management team, which is the group of leaders that gives counsel to Patricia, is the head of Patricia King Ministries, we were all in total agreement. So she reached out to you and said...
She reached out and said, I really believe like the Lord is putting you on our hearts. And she just began to tell me all about Shiloh.
Which we were starting the
exactly,
church.
just
Yep.
began to pour out her heart about Shiloh and what was going on with Shiloh, and that it was time for a pastor to come in or is specifically, someone of a millennial generation,
right.
because that's what she was looking at too, and that was something the Lord had given her, and that's why
Right.
she was looking at that, and so. I don't know anything else to do but to say, I sat there on the phone and I just said to myself, I'm in my office at work and I'm thinking to myself, hold on, Patricia, I got to close the door. Because I don't want anyone to hear me what I'm going to say. So I get up, close the door, I sit down and I'm sitting there and I'm just like, you want me to do what? I was like, and so I just said, you know what, let me pray about it. But I knew in that moment, Robert, that the answer was yes. I knew in the moment. And again, God sets you up, because I went home, I'm telling my wife and I'm excited and she's saying, I just had a dream.
Right.
I just had a dream that God called you into the service. Like in the dream,
Yeah.
I was being called into the military.
Right.
Okay, but it was a dream. And so you were being called into the service, and not only you, but our whole family.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, and so we just started asking God for confirmation, and we didn't make the decision lightly, Robert.
Right, and I know you didn't, because we all talked throughout the whole process. You came here, you guys stayed with Patricia and Ron for a while, and the other thing that you're leaving out is when we reached out with this, we had just started the church. It wasn't even coming close to supporting itself. We had very, very little to offer. And so you had to weigh all that up again. It wasn't
I totally forgot about that.
You had to weigh it up as a family all over again.
I honestly forgot about that, because I've been so in love with Shiloh that I just, you forget the hard times and the tough decisions sometimes. But yes, you're absolutely right. Thank you for reminding me. I actually had to think, I was thinking to myself, well, I'm just going to do the exact same thing I'm doing here in Las Vegas. I'm just going to transplant and do it there. So I started looking for jobs, and I started looking for ways to provide for my family.
Because Andrew, who you'd been serving with, he got a witness on this too and was all supportive of it.
Oh man, I took it right to my leadership.
You guys did it 100% right.
I took it right to my leadership. I didn't delay. I wanted to honor. And honestly, Robert, I even did this. I even said, listen, if you disagree, I will stay.
I think that's the way to go. Because ultimately, in doing that, you're saying, I trust God. And I know there's been times in my life where I've done that, and the responses come back not what I was expecting, and then you got to wrestle a little bit. It's like and it's never failed. Ultimately, God has gotten hold of that person's heart or opened their eyes so that it can be done in agreement.
Yeah, and this is my leadership now,
right.
So I have to be honoring and really, like, you got to put in the effort.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is you got to be honest. You got to be honoring. You really have to take it to the table and say, this is what's going on. And so I did, and the man started crying.
Oh.
Right there at the table. I was at lunch with him.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I could keep talking to you forever. No, this is great. And what I want you guys to hear is a couple things. From everything Francisco shared, some of what I shared from my journey, is what I want you to hear is some of the spiritual principles that are going on here.
Yeah, come on.
And it's being faithful,
That's right.
serving where you're planted,
That's
trusting in God. In Hebrews 3 and 4, it talks about how when he was trying to bring the Israelites into the promised land, into the fulfillment of the promise, it says they did not enter his rest because they did not believe. And I asked the Lord once, early on as a new believer, Lord, what didn't they believe? They didn't believe that you were God? And he said, no, they believed I was God. They had trouble believing I was good because I didn't do it the way they expected it. How, when, where, the way they expected. And he said, you'll enter into my rest, which brings you in, is the fast road into the fulfillment and manifestation of the promise when you trust that I'm good, even in circumstances that may not look or feel good. And what I want everyone to hear from your testimony and your story is you chose to do that. And he chose to do that. And sometimes it's a choice because, things don't always look like they're going the right way. Sometimes they look like they're going sideways. But every single thing that for you was a challenge or seeming like a setback, you can look back now and realize God was preparing you for it all. Not only preparing your heart, but you were able to inhabit the promise and the call that you're in now because you're prepared for it. The analogy I heard over and over and over again, my first several years in ministry, when I felt like things aren't moving quickly enough, I would get a similar word all the time. It's like you realize when they build a big building, it takes longer because the foundation has to be deeper and wider.
That's right.
To support the big building. So get excited that what God is doing is building a big foundation. I'd love to tell you, I'd go, yay, and I'd think, well, maybe the building doesn't have to be this big, God. Could we just start, even the first and second floor, and then we could expand. But look, I want you to know, you are important. Yeah. You do matter. And you know you have promises. Here's the thing, especially if you've heard that word over and over and over again. Did you hear Francisco say that when he was a young man, everywhere he went, he got called out by one person after another? Sometimes we get those words over and over and over again because God wants us to know it is real, it is coming, it is going to happen. And I personally think we get the bigger word, the more frequent word, the open-eyed vision or the clear knowing because it's going to be a long journey. But the long journey is for a purpose. It's so that you can come into everything he has for you. And here's the good news. Where we started is where we'll end. Genesis 28:15. God promises he will bring you into everything. He will constantly be with you. He is with you right now, and he is bringing you into everything that he has for you, has called you to, and has promised you. And one of the easiest ways to grab hold of that, and sometimes the challenge, the kingdom's simple. It's not always easy, but it's simple, is to do what Francisco chose to do, to praise God, to worship God, to trust God, to thank God, and to be real with God all along the way, because your suddenly is coming because God is faithful and he is trustworthy. Thank you so much for being with us for Heroes Arise again this week. Don't forget, go to menonthefrontlines.com, click that events link, see what we have coming up for you. While you're at menonthefrontlines.com, hit that donate button, sow in to what God is doing amongst his sons around the earth. Be a part of this move of God. Help support this program and the other things that Men on the Front Lines doing to encourage you, to equip you, and to empower you to be the hero, the warrior, and the champion that you are. And don't forget, as soon as we end here in just a couple seconds, we're debuting a new live video about the upcoming Man Camp. It's a chance to get away, unplug, you get to relax, plus you get to connect with a great group of guys who are on fire for God. That's what Man Camp is.
Man Camp was absolutely incredible.
You make great friends from across the country.
Joking and having a good time.
It's amazing because it seems like strangers, but you come and really it's guys that are on your same walk of life.
It's the brotherhood. We had an opportunity to learn about the kingdom, learn about ourselves.
Incredible teaching.
It's really edified me, encouraged me.
Being in the midst of all these men that are on fire for Jesus.
This is my second Man Camp now, and honestly, I can't imagine missing it.
We're hosting this Man Camp in Prescott, Arizona at a gorgeous campground. It's October 5 through 7, and you can get all the information you need by going to menonthefrontlines.com.
Guys, I want to invite you to Man Camp because it's life-changing.
You got to get here to Man Camp.
I recommend this for anybody.
Life-changing.
Nothing is like it.
I want to see you at the next Man Camp.
Yeah, come to Man Camp to just experience what God has for you.
It helped me take that leap of faith.
This propelled me further, faster.
I'm going home empowered.
It was life-changing, seriously.
You need to be at the next Man Camp.
It's a life-changing experience.
This is a life-changing experience. The breakthroughs here are incredible.
It's going to be amazing, and I can't wait to see you at Man Camp. It's a chance to get away, unplug, you get to relax, plus you get to connect with a great group of guys who are on fire for God. That's what Man Camp is.
Man Camp was absolutely incredible.
Make great friends from across the country.
Joking and having a good time.
It's amazing because it seems like